What's happening, everyone? Welcome to another LifeCast. First off, massive thank you once again for all the support. We've had some amazing messages from, I think, 5 or 6 episodes we've done so far. So please keep the comments and feedback coming. Much appreciated.
I've had more messages on this by a long way than obviously I had my other podcast, which is on hold at the moment. But we did 100 podcasts, but I never had as many people message anywhere near as what we've had off this one.
Same with mine. We've obviously had guests on in certain episodes that were maybe funny or an interesting guest, but with regards to real meaningful messages, some really heart-to-heart messages I've had back and forth with people. It's been by far the best kind of little project I've done. So again, massive thanks. We'll get some beers in. Keris.
Keris is back, yes.
Keris is back, I know. I'm back today. And I think this one, it's my turn to pick a topic this week.
Yeah.
And the topic is going to be stress and anxiety, which I think you'll have a bit more to say on it than me. Because we were just saying before we started, for me, stress and anxiety, I don't feel like I suffer much from it. I'll be completely honest. And I think that probably comes from, well, I say this, I always think about my mum passing away and getting blown up in Afghanistan and the things I've seen and experienced in Iraq and Afghanistan. So when things happen to me now, I think it's nowhere near as bad as that. And I don't seem to get to those levels of anxiety and stresses that I did back then.
Yeah.
So I don't feel I suffer as much. When I look at someone like you and we have our conversations, I think, fuck me, that's a stressed man sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
It
Keris.
feels it, thank you, Keris.
Would that be right to say, I mean?
Yeah, but what I would like to touch on there, because there is, when I very first met you, you did your talk, you talked about being particularly anxious. So there's a part, which we'll come on to in a sec, where you was particularly anxious in Afghanistan on a rooftop. I think it's worth going back to that moment because some of the things you say that you learnt from that, I've took into from your talk. So let's talk about that situation.
So a big thing, and probably anyone with anxiety will probably have a heart attack from this story, but again, it's probably one of the reasons I don't suffer as much now because of this one experience. And we were on a rooftop in Afghan, and the Taliban were talking, and we was having an interpreter with us who had a walkie-talkie. You could listen to what the Taliban was saying. I've been in Afghanistan a few days, not really experienced any firefights, and all of a sudden, the interpreter we had with us was listening to the Taliban and then relaying the messages back in English to us, what was going on. And the messages that were getting relayed were things like, they can see 8 people sitting on a roof. They're all getting in position, they're all ready. And me and my mates are sitting there thinking, fucking hell. You know, you're looking out, you can't see anyone, but you're just hearing these messages of people being out there planning this big attack to try and kill or injure you or one of your friends. And the anxiety is building, the stress, you know, you're not in control of the situation, you're fearful for the future. And this would go on and on and on for sometimes a couple of hours. More messages would come back up saying, once they get down off the roof, we're going to get them when they're there. And again, you're looking around thinking, I can't see anyone, but there are people out there who are planning my downfall. Again, the anxiety and the stresses are rising. Till eventually we got down off the roof and then a firefight would ensue. And I say in the presentations that I do, the getting shot at wasn't that scary. It was the build-up, the anxiety of the mental torture of worrying about what was going to come next. And I think once I kind of dealt with that, and I talk about controlling the controllables, my whole stress and anxiety level completely flipped, and I could control it a lot better. And the way I got to that was, it was a case of thinking, you know, there could be 10 Taliban out there, there could be 1 million, there could be, 10 machine guns, there could be bombs, they could be hiding here, they could be hiding there. I can't actually control what the Taliban are doing. All I can control is my own behaviour. You know, the guys around me, I can have an impact on them. And what will be, will be. And I think getting that into that mindset and then going forward, I think has left me in a position where I don't find myself getting half as stressed as I probably would.
In that same incident, up until the point where you went down, what was your anxiety levels?
Oh.
What was you thinking?
I was petrified. I was so nervous.
What was you thinking? I'm going
to die.
This is it.
I'm going to die. Yeah. I'm going to die, or one of my friends is going to die, or someone's going to get injured, and then the pressure's going to be on me, and I'm going to have to save someone's life. And am I prepared enough? Have I trained enough? And I was thinking back to past first aid lessons we've had, where and I'm thinking, did what do I do if he gets a gunshot wound? What do I do if he gets a shot to the leg? Do I need a tourniquet? Do I need a first field dressing? How do you call on the radio? All these stresses of what the fuck am I going to do if this happens, if that happens? When the reality was, none of it has even happened yet.
Yeah.
And I was just worrying so much about all these things.
Yeah.
So that's when it comes down to control the controllables,
Was there a point after that then? So immediately after that, there must have been other periods of your life that are not quite as drastic as that, but where your mind starts wandering. Because what when we talk about my situation, and we'll talk about where the anxieties go and they go and they go and they start flowing and multiplying, and there must be other times in your life where you felt, hold on a minute, my mind's going, and you've been able to approach it by stopping it in its tracks, if you like.
Yeah, I think that the whole mindfulness thing is something I've tried to work on, and be present in the moment, because you can feel yourself. I mean, I know I've done it. You can feel your mind's wandering, and it's making the situation worse and worse. And then, oh, what if that happens? Oh, and then if that happens, then this is probably going to happen, and then this might happen, and this might happen. After 5 minutes of your mind wandering, you've painted this horrendous picture of what may happen, but the reality is none of it's happened. So I've definitely been able to recognise when my mind is wandering, and I've also been a lot more in that mindset of, being in the moment, controlling the controllables. So, for example, the only other time I've had a kind of, I wouldn't even call it an anxiety, but we spoke last week about failure. When I failed to break the world record, I attempted it again a year later. So you could argue your anxieties would have been higher. This is second time round, it's bigger and better, it's got to make it work. At that point, all the things I could control, this time I had a running coach. I'd put in the miles. I knew I was capable. I'd ran faster times in training. I'd done all the hard work. So the anxieties that could have been there, I was pretty much like, nah, I'm in control of this situation now. Doesn't matter. It could have been snowing. I was confident I was going to do it on that day. So I think when I say to you I don't get stressed and anxious, I don't, probably as much as a lot of people, and I think it's because of those really stressful moments.
I'm glad you've mentioned that, because I think there's two very different, I think anxiety and being anxious is very, very different. I think being nervous and having anxiety is very, very different. I remember interviewing Paul Smith, obviously the boxer, and what I was intrigued by was, you do all that training and you get to the ring and everything's on the line. Your reputation, your ego, the dedication and commitment you've put in, the next fight and the financial rewards that would come, everything must be on that fight. And I said to him, how does it, what are you trying to achieve? As a feeling, what are you trying to be calm? And he said, absolutely not. Because now that like you talked about the race, this is like a transaction. This is an objective. This is an activity. I'll come on to mine in a second, because it's not that. Those kind of things I can quite embrace. But a day-to-day pressure, stress and anxiety is somewhat different. But I remember Paul Smith saying, when I get to that ring, I want to feel sick. Well, before the curtain goes down, my music starts, I want to feel fear. I want to feel nerves. I want to feel scared. And I can't remember the exact word for word, so I'm not taking words out of his mouth here, but it was along this line as a principle. I want to feel butterflies in my stomach.
Yeah.
I want to feel all the things that mean I'm ready. Other people in life will feel them and it will scare them.
Yeah.
And they'll think, I'm anxious. And I feel like it's a good little topic in the middle of this to discuss. It's okay to feel all them things. In fact, if you don't feel all them things, you might want to look at yourself and wonder why you don't. Are you doing enough?
Yeah.
Are you living enough if you're not doing some of those things?
You've absolutely nailed it. Two things I'll say on that is, number one, I've got this little thing at the moment. I might do it. Well, I will do it. I need to do it. I want to try stand-up comedy. Now, listen, we've been mates for a while. I'm not the funniest fellow when we're in a group, but I feel I've got some funny stories. And I think I could be, with a bit of training, an okay little 5-10 minute act. The biggest reason I want to do this, because I don't get those feelings when I do the motivational speaking. I've been very fortunate. I've spoken in front of 20,000 people. I've spoken America, China, all over the world. I do not get nervous anymore. and I'm searching for something that will make me feel anxious again and give me those butterflies. So I think you've absolutely nailed it. People will feel anxious and automatically think it's a negative, and it's not. It can be a real positive. And an interesting one with you, we spoke about being a parent. My little girl, she's only 8, and she come out one time from school, and she said the word anxious, and I got a bit pissed off, if I'm being honest, because I thought, why are you even knowing what this means? And whoever she's heard it from probably gave her a negative connotation to the word anxious. So I tried to explain to her, and I said, all being anxious is when you're excited and nervous at the same time. And I kind of tried to explain it that it's a good feeling to be anxious. You need to be a bit, you know, sometimes. And I'd hate people to, you know, because I think it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment. So I've got anxiety.
It is.
It's good to have anxiety now and again. It's good to be anxious, and I think that's the relationship I have with it. Like you've made a great point. Me being a bit anxious / excited about attempting a world record is different from being anxious day to day with work and stress from work. So, you know, there is a fine line with it.
If I talk about anxiety, right, more than being
I was so shocked to hear when you were younger, you used to suffer a lot with it.
Do you know what's really weird about anxiety, right, is I remember the first time I was anxious, right, and I've been anxious playing football or doing this or, you know, even when you was a kid and you was in a fight, there's all those things that happened. I don't remember any of that as being nervous or anxiety. What I remember, right, is I went to Florida. And normally if I go to, I was about 28 and I just started my own business. It was all about around the same time. And I remember, like, if you went to the big Blackpool, I'd look for where the big one is, I'd go on the big one. If I went to, you know, so if you went to a fairground, I'd be a thrill seeker. You know, not massively, but it was just like, go to a fun fair, where's the biggest ride? It's at the right, turn right, go on the biggest ride. I remember doing the exact same thing, and we got to Wet n Wild in Florida, and the biggest thing was like, I can't remember what it was called now, but anyway, it's like, you know, just a vertical drop into the water. And I got about 2 flights up the stairs, and I felt a bit of a wobble, just like a sensation. I thought, oh, I didn't know what it was, right? So I just carried on walking up the stairs. The more I walked up them stairs, I was starting to feel sick. My legs were going. And I was thinking, I've never been scared of heights before. Never been scared of heights before. I've never had any kind of irrational anxiety, right? Because it's really rational, isn't it? To be running for trying to break the world record in front of your friends and family, to feel anxious, nervous and excited, and all those things and all those feelings, getting you prepared for performance. I'm just walking up some stairs, mate. I thought, Jesus, this is weird. Maybe I've not eaten right. Maybe I've not had any carbs this morning. I feel really funny. That was the first thing. I get to, I don't know, 3/4 of the way up the stairs, and I'm almost can't take my next step. And I'm like, oh God, I've had a funny turn here.
Anything like this ever happened before?
Never. So I didn't know what it was. I was like, I've had a funny turn here. And I looked up and thought, there's about another 3 flights to go here. I looked down and I thought, no, I'm not going to do it. I can't physically get up the stairs. So I remember coming down the stairs just thinking, I wonder what that was, right? Perhaps, like I say to you, my first thing was, did I feel sick? Did I have a funny turn? Am I not well? Some people are going to resonate with this like it's a joke, seriously. Some people listen to this and be like, oh my God, because this is how it happens. And you get to know what's going to happen, but at the start you're like, what on earth, what the fuck is going on? So I got down to the bottom, my legs are shaking, I've been drained of all energy, you know, I'm white as a sheet. And at that point, I don't know what it is. So I think, did I have breakfast? Did I do this? Did I do it? Anyway, that's when I can remember it. Now, what would then happen over a period of time was I'd be driving my car and you'd get like a wave. And that wave would come. You're driving, I remember the next similar time, I was just driving it, woof, like a wave. I think, what, have I not, and it might have been 3 weeks after or a month after, I don't know the timelines, but I think, oh, what that is? Because I'd be just driving the car, there'd be no anxiety, it wasn't like I'm stuck in a traffic jam and I'm late, then you're okay to be anxious.
Just randomly coming over you?
Just driving down the road, be like, what's that? this thing started to happen. I thought, and then my mind started to go, well, I wonder if I'm getting ill, because you start to see like a blurred vision, starts to become blurry, yellow dots, different, just blurred vision. Then you start to kind of get that dry mouth, and you start to get palpitations, because that's the kind of things, you know.
I'm so glad I don't get anxiety, by the way.
You start to get palpitations. So what was happening was, I'd go back to, I wasn't even putting two together at the time. I was just thinking, maybe I'm not eating right. Because like me, sometimes I'm always trying to be in good shape. So sometimes I won't eat, I'll try and be dedicated, or I won't eat sugars, or I won't have bread for a period. I'm trying to think, am I on a diet here that's causing all this stuff? That was what I genuinely thought. I was 28 then, so I'd be playing like football on a Saturday afternoon. I remember at one point, I'd be like, I'd be at centre half, would play, be 30 minutes in, I'd just chase the forward back. I've done the tackle. Ball goes up the other end, and I'm going, whoa. And I'm like checking my pulse. I'm starting to check my pulse because my heart's beating so quickly, and I'm playing football, which I've done, all my life, and I'm thinking, something's not right. So this happened, I would say, mate, for about 6 months. Headaches, a lot of headaches.
All around the time you started your own business?
Only when I put it back. At no point did I think, I've started my business, so I must be stressed.
Well, that's what I was going to say straight away.
At no point did I think that. I just thought, I'm either ill here and something's going on, and I'm a bit scared now. Now I'm developing a health anxiety. It's like you on a rooftop, but there's no rationality behind what I'm thinking. Now I'm thinking, as a 28-year-old lad who's in as good a condition as a 28-year-old can be, you've got an illness. And it's all building up this, and I went on for about 6 months, and then the key to it was I was walking down the road at lunch break at a client's in Stockport, and I was walking in, and all of a sudden that wump feeling came. And it comes from like your feet up. I can't even describe what it is. It's like a big shove. It'd be like being shoved, but you're not being shoved, obviously. And at that point, I'm outside a newsagent's, and I think, fuck, I'm going to die. I'm having that. Must be what a heart attack feels like. Because my heart is it's coming out my chest, and I can just feel, and sweat's coming down my face. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm 28. I should have gone to the doctors. I've got a health anxiety here. I think I've ever been to it in this much detail, to be honest with you. I'm feeling it as I'm talking to you. And I'm going, this is fucking embarrassing. That's the first thing I remember thinking. There's no way I should be dying on a pavement in Poynton in Stockport at my age, and I'm embarrassed. I kind of stagger along a little bit. I'm staggering. And I managed to think, go and get a newspaper, weirdly. I got a newspaper because I seen a bench, and I managed to get to the bench. And I get to the bench, and my head's gone. I don't know what's going on at this, but I'm not in control here.
Fucking petrified.
I've got to tell you, I'm not in control of what's going on here. I lie down on the bench, and I wrote this in my book. I shut my eyes, and I thought, fucking hell, I'm dying here. I can't believe I'm going to die on a bench in Poynton. And I've got like a newspaper over me so that people might think I'm sleeping because I'm embarrassed.
Wow.
And then I fell asleep. Or I blacked out.
It's like the middle of the day.
Lunchtime, sunny day in the summer at 1 o'clock. I thought, oh, fuck. And I thought, I'm going to die. So I thought, am I going to sleep or am I dying, right? Seriously, that's what I thought. And I thought, well, I'm not in control. I'm going to have to just let what happens. And then I wake up. So I've laid down with the newspaper. I don't know whether I was asleep for 30 seconds, 3 minutes.
I was going to say, how long was this?
I haven't got a clue, mate. I just woke up and thought, what just happened there? I could feel, but I felt groggy. I managed to walk back to my car. I just got in my car, and weirdly I drove to my mum's. I don't know why she'd have been off, to be honest with you. But I drove to my mum's house. I drove to my mum's, and I said, something's not right. That house has like been my home that she lives in since I was born. So it's must be a real like
comfort zone thing.
Comfort zone, subconscious comfort zone. I get there, I lie down, she makes me a piece of toast. I think maybe I've not eaten again, you know, and I go sleep. And I wake up and I'm right as rain. That was the first time it happened.
And had you heard it? Because you're talking 15 years ago now, anxiety attacks and things like that.
18 years ago. I'd never even heard of it.
Exactly, yeah.
So at that point, I thought I'd had a funny turn. Carried on cracking on. I won't go into too much detail then, because that is probably as much detail as anybody needs to hear on that part. But I would say that happened then. Every week or two for the next 6 months, something would happen. Now, after that, I had to go to the hospital. Every time it happened, I had to go to the hospital. And the only thing I can describe it as, it'd be like you being plugged in now. It'd be like whatever, that fridge being plugged in. Take the plug out, and everything shuts down immediately. The minute they did the ECG on me at the hospital and said, here's your ECG, everything's fine, it was like plugging it back in again. There was no, it didn't take me an hour to recover or 1 minute off. It was like, whoom, vroom. And that's how it affected me. So that was 17, 18 years ago.
But how long after that then, or did you kind of realise these are anxiety attacks and, you suffer from a stressful life, you got your own business, normal everyday family life. At what point did you kind of realise I need to kind of get better at managing my stress and anxiety levels? Because you can't keep living like that.
No. So at that point, I didn't know what to do, didn't know who to speak to. Because it wasn't spoke about like it. No. I'm saying it's spoke about today, but it's a lot more.
Well, mate, just on that, I had no idea what an anxiety attack was like, until
I swear to God.
You've painted it in
It's basically like you're dying. It's like, what I can read back is I think your body gives you signals. This is important, this part. I talked about certain things, and it might have been a little bit blurred vision, or you feel a bit like a third eye looking in. You almost look at yourself, not like I'm looking at you now. If I was in that anxious period, there'd almost be a thing looking down on us. It's like you're not in the same body. I don't know how to describe that, but that's how it feels, like a third eye's looking down. You're looking down on yourself rather than through your own eyes, is how it feels like. And it feels like, I can only imagine, it's what death feels like before you die. That's the only thing I can imagine, but I have no idea clearly what that feels like. But it feels like your body's just saying enough's enough. Which, by the way, that's what a panic attack is. So I started to read up on it, and I started to read that a panic attack's actually not as scary as what you think. What's actually happening is, over that period of time, the body will send you signals. It could be headaches. It could be lots of dizzy spells. It could
build up to it.
And it will give you signals. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. If you don't read them signals, it then goes, enough's enough. To save you, this important thing if people are having panic attacks, to save you, not to kill you, we're going to take, the central nervous system is going to take control of your body. And that's what happens. So it floods you with chemicals, and that's why you become out of control.
So what have you done then over the years then? Because you're a family man, your own business. I mean, the Paul Cheetham that you've just described then isn't the Paul Cheetham I know now, who's effective in his various ways. Or he doesn't, maybe he is still, no. I don't know, but he doesn't seem to be. How have you managed that then?
So clearly I was getting signs, right? So then it's like, well, what is it? So the first thing I did, that was the most important part, is what I've actually just said is, if you get scared as you're approaching a panic attack,
reading the signs,
all of a sudden you've got to understand that the panic attack is not the scary part. Right, the panic attack's actually there to save, because in the middle of a panic attack, everything's game over. Do you know what I mean? You just want to die, really. Right, so the first part is to understand, and I read about panic attacks. All of a sudden I wasn't as scared of him. It took about 6 months. All of a sudden I wasn't as petrified and terrified as having one. That was the first part. The second part was, how do you then manage on a day-to-day stress? Because I ain't going to turn away from stress. I'm somebody who embraces stress. I run to stressful situations. It's just who I am. I accept who I am. I wouldn't let even what happened then, as bad as what I've just explained to you, think, oh, well, don't own your own business, go and get a job. You could say before a fight, I hate I hated on a transactional level, let's call it, public speaking. I would feel like I'm nearly going to pass out on public speaking. It didn't feel like a panic attack though. It felt like I'm just petrified, feared, scared of the activity I'm about to perform. Yeah. And it didn't stop me doing that either. But with the panic attack, I just decided, okay, I've got two choices here. I go for medication. Now, I'm the type of person who I don't have a paracetamol if I get a headache, I drink water. It's got to be very, very, almost never do I have medication. So I wasn't going to go down that route. I'm not saying to other people don't. What I would say is do everything lifestyle before you choose that route, right? So I'd look at how much caffeine he had. So if I'm living on a day-to-day basis now, I'll get up every day and think, how do I feel today? If I feel like a 1 or a 2, I'll crack on with my day. If I feel like even a 3 or 4, I don't want to get to a 7 because I know how it can start to snowball. So I go, okay, don't have coffee today. Right, what else? Don't have alcohol.
Just managing it more, yeah.
What else? Drink 2 litres of water, right? Because if you don't drink 2 litres of water, your body is not in the right metabolic state to perform. General day-to-day stuff. So that's that. Sleep. Do I get 7, 8 hours a night? Nearly every night, right? What's the other things that I do? I'll come to meditation in a minute. The other things that I do that I never have caffeine anyway after 11 o'clock, right? I always...
At 11, yeah, in the morning?
Oh yeah, I don't have caffeine in the afternoon. No, it's just not an option for me. I don't have things like Coca-Cola and Diet Coke, hardly ever. I don't have caffeine.
It's funny, you know, when you're talking about anxiety and stresses, they're probably things that people don't think probably have a bigger impact on, but clearly, you know, they do.
Sugar, because you get mood crashes. So I fast mainly. I don't eat until 1 o'clock because you have that 7, 8 o'clock piece of toast. Before you know it, ghrelin kicks back in again at 10, 11. You want some more, telling you to have some more sugar. And we all know that sugar affects our mood terribly. And how your mood is will dictate often.
You're speaking about like things that people can do, though. I think what's fascinating anyway for someone who thankfully, after what you just described, doesn't suffer from it. I think people who maybe have suffered what you've done and didn't know what it was, I think, you know, that's going to help people anyway, of knowing what they may be going through. Do you know what I mean?
And I think the key is to do it, to try and do it. But I self-learn, and I'm quite cool with that. I'm glad that I did, because I don't have medication for it. By the way, I'm not saying that I never would, but I definitely wouldn't go straight to medication.
Look at your lifestyle first.
It's got to be, because if you're having caffeine, it's a known stressor. Yeah. If you're having lots of sugar, it's a known mood changer. If you're having alcohol, it's a known depressant and anxiety beer fear. Yeah, you know, comes straight after. Comes straight after it. If you're not in a metabolic state by drinking the right amount of water, if you're not exercising, if you're not living in the moment. One of the things that happened to me, what I found was quite interesting, was I walked in one day to somebody who measures. I walked in one day to somebody who measures. What they do, they measure energy. And apparently this, if you're living in the moment, which we all should do, of course, your energy is pretty centralised. And of course you can measure energy, right? They can measure, I don't know what the tool is that they use to do, but you can measure energy. She came in, and the minute I walked in into this kind of forum, she said, "Is it okay if you're an anxious guy, aren't you?" I said, "Well, yeah, I am actually. How do you know that?" She goes, no, because she goes, anxiety comes from the stomach. You've got some things underneath your eyes, and your stomach's linked to them things under your eyes, and that's why I can tell you're an anxious guy. Right, fair enough. She said, "Now I'm going to prove it to you now." And she measured, if I stood, how far away my energy was protruding forwardly away from my body. And she said, "You never stop, do you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You don't even contemplate what's happening now. You have to think and think and think and think, and you're that far forward." She actually said, "Look at the shape of your body." And I actually looked at the shape of my body, and my neck was starting to protrude forward. Because, you know, if I drive in a car, I'm like this. I'm like over it. I'm like, I can't get to the destination quick enough.
I don't think that'll surprise people who've listened to all the LIFECAST, because we've said in the past, I'm one of these people, I'll probably rest on my laurels too long. You're like, fuck this, next one. So that doesn't surprise me.
No, I've never had the opposite, because she pulled other people up that said, "You're depressed. You suffer from depression, depressive thoughts." And the guy was like, "What?" And she went, "Watch me measure him now compared to you." So she'd walk in front of him and the energy would be gone. The aura, as she called it, the energy would be gone. When she walked behind him, she could walk and walk and walk and still feel the energy. And that was quite...
It's interesting, that, yeah.
A penny dropped with me, and then I'm going to come on to it now, and I said, how do I stop this then? I don't want to be not driven. I'm scared. I feel like that's... Being driven is like my... It's like my toolkit. It's like this... Why? It's what I do. And she said, but you've got to live in the moment. You've got to bring the energy in. How do I do that? She said, have you ever meditated? I was in a room with 25 people. I was probably 32 or so at the time. Everybody else was 50. And when she said, put your hand up if you meditate, I was the only one who didn't. I was the only one who didn't. So I thought, well, I like to learn from the elders, as we talked on other podcasts. So that night I went home and meditated, and after 10 minutes I went, I can't meditate. My mind's everywhere. I've
been there, yeah.
Right? So I messaged her, and she said, what have you done at the gym today? And I can't remember what I told her. And she said, and what did you lift? And I told her, and she said, did you do that on day one? And I said, no. Yeah, what makes you think that you're going to train your brain on day one? And I was like, the penny dropped again. So I only go on to I go onto YouTube, and I only do this now when I can feel an anxiety build. So I won't do this every night, but trust me, if I start to feel anxious, I go straight onto YouTube, guided meditation, 20 or 30 minutes. I probably do it before I go to sleep, and I listen to a guided meditation, and it brings you back in the moment. Now, I've probably done 200 or 300, and maybe more, I don't know. I reckon it took me 10 or 15 before, if anything, I just relaxed. And I have my Fitbit on. My Fitbit will know by my resting heart rate, my sleeping heart rate, my heart rate variability. My heart rate, Fitbit can tell me when I've meditated, because everything becomes more recovered.
It's good that you've got those signs in place. And again, I knew this episode would be an interesting one, because thankfully I've not been through a lot of that, and it's sad to know that, you know, the people are out there, because the word anxiety is banded around a lot, and for those who are genuinely suffering from anxiety and they're having to go through that, it's a terrible thing, and it's made me go like, wow, fucking hell. The one thing I was going to say, which is nothing to do with that, because I think you've made a great point. The only thing I will say is, for anyone who's sitting there thinking, oh wow, Andy's nailed it, he's not, by not being anxious enough and stressed enough, that can also be a problem. And my very quick kind of story on things is a stupid joke, for example, that me and my dad have, is I went over the Runcorn Bridge, and you know, you'd have like a day or two to pay the bill, whatever you text it through, and I'm very lackadaisy, and I'll sort it tomorrow, and you obviously forget, and then life gets in the way. And then I remember about 9 months later, my dad rings me, and he's like, there's a debt collector outside. I was like, okay. He's like, he's planning to tow your car away now. I said, fucking what? He says, apparently you didn't pay the Runcorn Bridge 9 months ago. They need 600 quid off you. And I said, right, okay, I'll sort it now. So I paid it. So I got home, and he's like, what the fuck? It's only 2 quid. Why didn't you just do it at the time? And all the signs were there to just do it. And I'm so laid back and don't try not to get stressed about things. In the end, it causes big problems, whether that's financially at that point or what. But the way maybe anxiety and stresses can hit you on a daily basis, I kind of just, no, it'll be fine, it'll work itself out, and I've gone to the other way. I think the balance is somewhere a happy medium of not just being too relaxed, but not being too, but just, you know.
It's always about balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the thing is there'll be another podcast that we do where we just talk about day-to-day general living, you know, how you day-to-day.
Almost a day in the life, almost.
Almost. Because the anxiety is the extreme part, right? You've got extreme anxiety. Then what you've got is day-to-day pressure, right?
And then over it, you've just got not giving a fuck type thing over here.
100%,
you know.
100%. And or being too scared to move up that continuum, because you feel like now if you do feel nervous, stressed, butterflies in your stomach, you don't like it. I don't veer away from that today, even though I've had the experience.
You manage it a lot better.
I just live a lifestyle that's disciplined, because I know that's what I need to get through the day. It's as simple as that, really. So I think if anybody has got, If anybody's not at that level, they've got to push themselves to do more. If anybody's at the level of anxiety, they must make immediate lifestyle choices. Now, if you're just under pressure, and we all are under pressure, do you deal better under pressure the day with a hangover?
No. I know, and the funny thing is, the things you're saying are obvious. You know, when you want to be at your optimum, is it going to be when we've just had 10 pints the night before? Probably not. On the days you're going to feel anxious and all that, are those days going to come after you've been in the gym the day before, you've had 3 meals, you've drank 6 pints? No, you're probably going to be actually very good at it. They're all obvious things, aren't they? And I think...
And we shouldn't forget them, right? Because it's a bit like this. It's like, I've just gone to the extreme there. So we've talked about breaking world records, which is an extreme objective. We've talked about it being anxious, which is or having anxiety, which is being anxious is fine. Having anxiety is different. We've talked about extremes, but the reality of it is every single day people are dealing with pressure, pressure to pay the bills. Well, are you going to deal better? Right? Are you going to be a good dad? Are you going to be a good husband? Are you going to be a good wife? Are you going to be a good girlfriend, brother, sister? Are you going to be a good individual?
Good person, yeah.
Correct. Are you going to be a good individual under pressure if you don't prepare that day for the pressure?
Yeah, when you're managing all those things, you generally are a better person. Like you say, better mum, a better dad, when you are coping with those things. And I think that's what probably has been, for me as well, the kind of standout from this conversation, listening to your experience with it, is realising what anxiety can be, what pressure and stresses are, and how you yourself react to them, so that you can combat that and maintain being the person that you want to be.
I had general pressure today. Could call it stress. So I made sure I didn't drink. I knew I was going to have it. You can't always know you're going to have it, but sometimes you knew. I always find it funny, you mentioned in the alcohol one, people go to funerals and get drunk. I wonder what that fucking morning after feels like.
Yeah.
I wonder what that morning after feels like. Because if I know that I'm going to a funeral of somebody that's close to me, I ain't drinking. Because I don't want the after effects in the morning. So we're on a bit more like, rather than going like, what about that? Well, what about that? Well, what about if you've just got this bobbling in life that we all have every single day? I think it's important that people recognise it.
Yeah.
And they don't go, I'm stressed, I need 5 cups of coffee. No, you're stressed, don't have any coffee. I'm stressed, I need Diet Coke. No, you're stressed. There's a funeral, I need to get pissed. No, there's a funeral, you probably don't need to. Yeah. I feel like that's the balance.
You've said a lot of kind of self-learning, which I think has been really important, that people will no doubt have thought, actually, you know what? I can learn from, whether it's listening to this on YouTube and just seeing actually what can I do to de-stress, and like you say, whether it's the caffeine, whether it's the sugar, whether it's the alcohol, knowing how to cope with it better. I think we'll probably end up revisiting this one because hopefully people at home way, but that's fascinating to me as someone who doesn't suffer as much as stress and anxiety as that. That was a bit fucking...
Well, that's what these podcasts are about, mate.
I'm glad I don't fucking suffer, but anyway, listen, I found that fascinating. Hope you did too. Please keep supporting the LIFECAST and we'll see you next week.